And now we go to the commodities space now to see what's happening there. We heard about oil there trading above $80. That's for Brent, and that's exactly what concerns Nigeria. We have to have this conversation with us, Oluwatomi Maiwa, senior analyst with financial derivatives company, joins us virtually from Victoria Island. Hi, Oluwatomi, thank you for your time.
Hello, good morning, Hini.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
Great. So in the midst of all the subsidy removal and non-removal and palliatives and all of that, we've seen looking at the earnings, we've seen some oil companies, MRS, Eternal Oil, doing well. Obviously, the hike in price has been of benefit to them. Now we see Brent is up again, even though global crude oil prices is always so volatile. It's up 0.64%. We see Brent trading above $83. This should seep back into Nigeria, but what kind of reaction or what kind of impact can we expect in Nigeria?
Thank you very much again. But let me start by saying that why we're actually seeing that increase in Brent price, although we saw it decline recently. This morning, investors were actually skeptical about the US downgrade. And so we saw that, investors were sort of looking at the market and, we saw that bearish sentiment in the market. But in the near to long term, prices of crude oil will actually remain high, above $80 per barrel. And why are we going to see that? Because the supply, the oil market is actually tight. There's a tight supply, considering the increased cuts that we've seen from the OPEC Plus, and most likely we might see Saudi Arabia extend its 1 million barrel a day cuts into September again, as it has promised. So all of these are actually leading to a lower supply in the market. And considering the fact that the global economy is actually now recovering, don't forget that IMF actually revised the global GDP growth. So it's saying that there's been the problem of inflation has been most central banks are now beginning to begin to bring inflation closer to their target, and so there's going to be an improved demand. So that is actually going to keep oil prices high, even in the short to long term. Bringing it back to Nigeria, first of all, definitely that means external earnings will increase for Nigeria, especially considering the fact that now that our exchange rate is now reflecting the market rate, so the earnings for the government will actually increase once it's brought into Nigeria. But considering that the market, the fuel subsidy has been reduced, we will see that it will actually, the price of the market, the local price of of fuel will actually increase, considering the global price has actually increased. So all of that will lead to higher fuel prices in the near to medium term. So that significantly, we've seen the price of fuel increase from about an average of 532 to about 617, which is actually disturbing for many industries in Nigeria. And considering the fact that there's been high inflationary pressures before, and all of this coming into play, it's actually going to reduce disposable income for most industries. But it could also be a good thing for the oil industries in Nigeria, even though we've seen declined demand in oil, in fuel consumption, considering the fact that people can no longer deal with that increase in the price of fuel.
So a couple of things you said there, but one that sticks out, of course, that Nigerians will not want to hear is the possibility of another increase in petrol prices. Yeah, but unfortunately, it's a deregulated market now. That means it's supposed to reflect the global
prices.
Exactly.
Very correct. Very correct. So which is it's very sad, but then we just have to take it like that.
Yeah, but I had a conversation close to this with Mr. Ruwani, who is the Chief Executive Officer, of your company, FDC, and he said that subsidy has not totally been eliminated. Because if not, then now that Brent is at $83, more than $83, perhaps we should expect a spillover into the petrol prices. And right now, we had Labour lead a protest nationwide yesterday, still talking about the hike that we have. If we were to add another one, I do not know how this country will be like.
Well, I'll say for now, we might not see that immediate increase reflect. Why? Because most industries would have stocked up their inventory. They would have, had to buy down, and that would be what would be sold out for some period before they will now begin to reflect global prices. So basically, I think it has to do with what once you're able to convince the Nigerian citizens of what the government is about, what they intend to use the money for, to boost aggregate demand in the economy. So probably if we are seeing more measures from the government to be able to resuscitate the economy, probably we might see less pushbacks from the citizens. So I think that side has to be very clear. The government must come, although we've seen that the 500 billion that the president actually announced palliative, but that is still small. The magnitude of it is actually very little. It's just about 0.5% of total GDP. We need nothing less than about 5% of total GDP, probably 10 trillion, to be able to feel the impact of the palliative. And then what is going to be the structure? How is it going to be, disbursed in a manner that will be efficiently used? Most of these programs end up, being, futile, because it ends up in the hands of, people who don't need it, or probably use it for something else. So the structure, the institutional framework through which that palliative will be implemented must be very, very clear. So that is one way. So I think, like we've always been saying, that we do not just need policy changes. We also need the institutional reform to ensure that all of this reform, come, into will actually stabilize the economy. So we need policy change, and then we also need institutional reform that will actually bring about a stabilized growth in the economy. So I think that's the way forward for now.
All right, and talking of the way forward, I guess commodities prices are reacting to all of this hike and inflation. Definitely. And all of that.
Yes, so basically we are seeing in Nigeria, prices actually increased in all, especially for food. We are still saying that price surge because because of the increase in transportation cost, and then the naira, it's actually depreciating, but has actually stayed in few days. But then we saw it depreciate from about 800 to 800 to about 8, now trading about 875 now. So looking at wheat prices, the price of wheat has actually increased globally, and also in Nigeria, we've seen, it's actually turned into flour. So we've seen that that increase in price actually filter into the price of flour. And considering the fact that the import duty has been adjusted to about 775 naira per dollar, all of these things are actually filtering into the price of flour. So basically, all prices have increased. We have the semo, we have those end products or processed products from flour are actually increasing. So looking at spaghetti and all of that, so it's actually filtering into prices, especially food prices, and because food is a necessity, right? So the ability for the consumers will have no choice than to take it in, even though there can be alternatives that people would actually have to switch to. But compared to other commodities that are not necessity, to be hard for them to filter and to pass their cost to consumers. But for food, we'll see that reflect more.
Yeah, well, imagine if we did not have to import wheat or flour, and all of that. Imagine what would have been happening to the naira at this time. But we'll leave that to our imagination at this time until we can bring it to come to pass. Oluwatobi, our senior analyst at Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.